healthcare system better. Oh, here we go. We're going to do it one more time. So welcome everybody to Remaking Medicine. My name is Emily. I am the author of Artists Remaking Medicine and also a healthcare brand strategist in our sector for more than 15 years. I have with me today Dr. Brewster, who is going to be an incredible part of our conversation, talking about his work as an illustrator, also his work in pediatrics and systems change in healthcare. So thank you so much, Ryan, for being with us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Wonderful. Well, give us a quick introduction to you and your work and all the many, many things that you have going in your life.
I'll do my best. Well, it's something that I've been thinking about a lot recently because I am applying for various fellowships post-residency graduation. But by way of quick introduction, so I am Ryan, and I'm a third-year pediatrics resident as part of a joint program between Boston Children's Hospital and Boston Medical Center, and will be graduating in just a couple of months, after which I'll be joining Harvard Medical School's Health Tech Fellowship and working with a group called Ariadne Labs, which does a lot of health systems innovation work. I am involved in health services research and work in clinical entrepreneurship focused on building, scaling, low-cost technologies. And then when I'm not working clinically or my head is not in the books, I work as an illustrator and graphic designer focused on scientific communication and being pretentious about fonts.
I love it. We need more fonts for sure.
I know.
Well, tell us a little bit more. You described online that you had a clumsy and awkward journey into medicine. So give us a little bit of the backstory of how you've landed yourself here right at the intersection of so many different interesting healthcare fields.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when I first decided to become a doctor, it appealed to me because of the structure. The next kind of 10 years as an undergraduate student are very clearly delineated for you. And so it felt like you can kind of put yourself on that path and have a career with meaningful social impact. It quickly became apparent to me that kind of my character, which is very much that of a generalist. I'm someone who loves to be involved in a lot of different domains, as someone who lives kind of at the margins and finds insights in that way. Didn't really fit with the classic mold of what a physician was. Medical school was really challenging for me. Day one, you're asked, what specialty do you want to do? You're expected to have your life kind of mapped out for you. But the things that I was most drawn to were the opportunities to explore all of these different facets of healthcare. And what makes it so beautiful is that it spans so many different fields, from the arts to the sciences to policy to research. And I found myself most fulfilled when I was kind of hopping between those. And for a long time, the arts in particular was something that I kind of did in parallel. Growing up in high school, in college, I saw it primarily as just something to do at the end of the day. It became increasingly clear that there were significant challenges with misinformation and scientific communication that really came to a head during COVID. And I could play kind of a unique role as a bridge between the public and the policy and research that was being generated. And more recently have been excited about the ways that we can use the creative arts as a tool for advocacy and elevating important policy and health justice causes. So I guess in summary, it's been a meandering path to the extent that the next step for me was never particularly clear. I love the quote. I don't know if you're familiar with John Green. He's an author. And there's a quote from his book called that reads, "Pay attention to the things you pay attention to." And so that didn't necessarily lead to like a very linear path, but one where I felt like I was doing what I thought mattered most to me.
And did you find, I mean, I'm so pleased to hear that it does seem to be changing, but, for a long time, people in medical education felt a lot of pressure to not be a creative person or to have other interests outside of medicine. And like you said, to have that path and like to be singularly focused and like, I am going to be a nephrologist and this is my entire identity. It sounds like maybe you didn't encounter that much pushback to your art, but maybe I'm wrong. Tell us about, being an artist and an illustrator, and specifically an illustrator who's like doing advocacy type art, in that medical education landscape.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm just very stubborn and encountered a lot of naysayers along the way. And you kind of have to contextualize yourself in whatever learning environment you're in. I was fortunate to go to Stanford for my medical training that is just very much steeped in multidisciplinary thinking. And so was able to be supported by other, not necessarily visual artists, by poets, by journalists, by writers who have found the intersection between healthcare and whatever their creative outlet looked like. And it was just so clear to me that the impact they were having drew very much from their expertise in expression, but also kind of their medical background that allowed them to communicate things in a way that was accessible and meaningful. It can be very challenging, particularly in academic spaces where I am now, to align the work that you're doing creatively with the incentive structure as a physician that very much kind of emphasizes the traditional modes of productivity, things like research, whether at the bench or doing clinical trials, creating medical devices, things that have very kind of clear outputs, are increasingly challenging what that status quo looks like with the emergence of humanities programs, with the emergence of diversity, equity, inclusion frameworks. And I'm hopeful that that will only kind of continue to expand as we reimagine what a doctor looks like and the difference that a particular domain can have.
Oh, I love that. I love thinking about, your professional portfolio in the future, not just being things that you published in journals, but like, yeah, I made this infographic and it got seen 10 million times. And that's like an impactful part of my work as a physician. Tell me about some of the artwork that you did. I know COVID was big for you. You've also done some work around like Narcan and opioid. Like, what artworks really stand out as something that you've really loved to create?
Yeah. So I think my foray into art as a tool for communication and advocacy really started during COVID. I was in medical school at the time, and we were sidelined because all of the hospitals were trying to protect us. And I felt very frustrated that I was not able to contribute despite being very energized by the ways that healthcare workers were able to address massive systemic failures in our healthcare functioning. And so I started making infographics for the hospital, helping with various things around clinical protocols, doffing, that then kind of ballooned into partnerships with what ended up being over, I think, 50 different clients. We provided pro bono services. I was able to recruit people from my design world, people from my medical world, to collaborate on various projects with, the African CDC, to physicians on Native American reservations, to academics who were launching the next big clinical trial. And then, of course, that also came in the wake of the George Floyd murder and the protests that followed. And I became much more vocal about those views, particularly the ways that healthcare can perpetuate some of these biases and disparities, and found that a visual medium was a way that I was able to communicate the frustration and anger I felt visually in a way that I couldn't do through words. And kind of my most recent crusade has been, how do we make public health sexy? And the project that you're referencing was a sticker I designed after Narcan, which is an antidote for opioid overdoses, was made over the counter. So you can get it just like you do your Tylenol or your ibuprofen. And that is a massive breakthrough in how we manage the opioid crisis, and really empowers everyday people to be part of that. And so I created these stickers and I think I've sold over 3,000 of them to date, and then directed all of the funds raised from that to a nonprofit that is providing Narcan kits to health centers and people directly. And so it's kind of my small way of amplifying these really important causes with my particular skill set.
Yeah. Well, and I know you said you're stubborn, so that's a piece of the success here. But a lot of folks that I talk with who are really passionate, who do want to see change, who do want to create things, feel really scared sometimes about putting themselves out there, especially in like an academic medical setting, which can feel big and a little scary sometimes. And I know you said online that you've nearly been sued by several hospitals and organizations. So do you have any best practices or tips for folks who might be thinking like, I would like to do a sticker, I'd like to write an op-ed, or I'd like to put something out there, but I feel like I'm part of this, massive system?
Well, I mean, I think the first thing to call out is just that imposter syndrome is so real. And we look at these wildly successful people around you. I mean, I'm in Boston, surrounded by some of the best hospitals in the world. And so it can be very intimidating to deviate from kind of what has been laid out to you. And I think part of it that has become very important for me is like having a clear North Star. It doesn't necessarily have to be something very tangible or concrete, but for me, as an example, something that has driven me during medical school and beyond has been this idea of leveraging the privilege that I have as a physician, as an artist, as an entrepreneur, to expand access to care to the most marginalized among us, both within the United States and globally. And that has very much kind of informed the activities that I have taken on and decided to take risks on. One of the very important things within these academic centers that tend to be very slow to progress and adopt new ideas is to protect yourself with networks and like-minded people. Very rarely will you see a complete overhaul in the way that medicine is practiced. And so I think becoming comfortable with incremental change, as frustrating as that might be, so long as that needle is continuing to move forward, is really important. And I think that the people who I see struggle most with burnout and disillusionment with their career are those who have these very idealistic values, but are not able to put that into pragmatic terms. That's a hard pill to swallow, but I think it's necessary to make progress and to advance in a system that can sometimes feel like you're pushing against it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big thing that I'm working on right now. I'm getting ready to go to this event with Columbia and talking about medical ethics and art and talking about the absolutism, like especially in the last 10 years, I would say, and especially with social media, there's this push towards things are like black and white. They are good or they are bad. And like a hospital is bad or a health plan is bad and a pediatrician is good. And like trying to just be really absolutist. I think that has really, it's made it like it's almost a form of perfectionism, right? Where like you can never succeed if everything has to be perfect, if everything has to be exactly good. And so trying to get more comfortable with ambiguity and with like you can be a force for good you can push things forward, you can collaborate with other people and create change, but like you as one individual should not try to shoulder the burden of trying to fix the entire healthcare system by yourself.
Right. And I think very, very rarely are these things, if ever, done by a single individual. Like the challenges of healthcare are so interwoven and complex that no one person has the expertise, the skills, the influence, the power to be able to do things. So I think that's another thing. What I love about these tricky problems is they inherently require you to disentangle a lot of different pieces. Very rarely are things solved by just doing it in a silo.
Yeah. And I think especially for physicians, sometimes, you know, you're a professional who's been trained to identify systems issues and fix them. And it can feel really, I think, extra painful sometimes for physicians to be in a healthcare system that feels really, really broken and sick and full of all these issues. And you're like, I am, you know, you're supposed to be somebody who can help fix these things. And to find that way forward is really challenging, right? Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, tell me some good news. I mean, I think one thing I will say just from my side is that, you know, just the fact that you exist and you're doing this work to me is like this is good news, right? Because if I talk to physicians who are even, you know, 20 years older, they're like, this is like absolutely not, like no one can ever find out that I play guitar or that I am a photographer. Like this is, you know, absolutely forbidden.
Right over here. I think you can see it.
Yeah, right. So, you know, I think that's to me a sign of progress, of change in medical education. You know, you have not been completely demoralized by your medical education so far, so that's good news.
Yeah. If anything, I've been radicalized, and people respond to that stress in a lot of different ways. And I think I'll just preface by saying that, like, to survive residency is an enormous accomplishment unto itself. I've seen so many different versions of what success looks like with my like truly incredible peers, whether that be starting a family, starting a company, writing their first paper, testifying for Congress. And I think that really illustrates this idea that there's no like singular way to have a fulfilling life in medicine. And in fact, I think we should encourage more of that, those kind of unique pathways that align with what our personal and professional values are. My work coming into residency very much focused on the ways that we can use technology as a vehicle for social change and equity. And in a place like Boston that tends to be very old-fashioned, I felt very much like an outlier. And, you know, slowly but surely, I was able to find my people and have been able to participate in some really fulfilling projects. And the work that I'll be doing next year with Ariadne Labs will be kind of conceptualizing and launching pediatric hospital at home. So how do we recreate the inpatient experience and setting in someone's home, leveraging technology, remote monitoring, and ultimately providing care in a more culturally responsive way. And that evolved from listening to a podcast to cold emailing the guy who was on the podcast, and now primary mentor. So I think it's a great example of those like kind of small wins that then can snowball into things that for me are really going to be defining at least the next 1 to 5 years of my life, which is pretty crazy to say. And a year ago, I would not have given you the same answer.
Well, you have to tell us, of course, what the podcast is.
So it was Freakonomics MD, which I think sadly has been discontinued. But it takes the same approach as Freakonomics, so using like really empiric analysis to understand social questions, and applies it to healthcare. He's a health economist, and highly recommend listening to it.
Amazing. Well, I mean, I think that's one of the things I also love about bringing art into medicine is it's an incredible beacon often to find other people who are like-minded, right? And who share your enthusiasm. And putting out a book or an illustration or a podcast is a way of signaling out to the world, like, who else is out there who wants to team up? And I think that's another thing I just love about art too, is that idea of collaboration, of creating a studio or a collective or a gallery or a team. And, and that, whether or not you change the world, that work is fun and it's inspiring. And, being able to find those people to come with you into the future is so fun.
Yeah. And I think like what we so often forget about practicing medicine, and this is by no means an individual's fault, but rather kind of the systemic issues that are imposed upon doctors with, burnout being driven by administrative responsibilities and documentation. We tend to forget that there is a human in front of us, and there's an incredible amount of storytelling and narrative that we are privileged to hear. And one of my mentors used to say, before you enter a room, like, wash your hands, as like a cleansing ritual, almost to clear your mind and really focus on the person in front of you. And we intersect with so many different walks of life. Just yesterday, had a patient who had migrated from Haiti by way of Mexico and came up through the southern border. And then the very next room was a family from Brookline, just there for a well child check. And so I found that the arts are a way for me to be able to kind of bottle up those experiences and communicate them to a wider audience, whether that is just for kind of my own processing and coping, or in order to articulate a broader kind of action-oriented policy or social statement.
Oh my gosh, I love that idea of hand washing as like a ritual. Oh, that's going to stay with me forever.
Yeah. I can't take credit for that.
No, but that's so beautiful. I really love, that's such a part of medical culture, and there's all those like TikTok videos that are so funny, like the doctor zooming in, like washing their hand, like on the rolly chair. It's such a stereotype, but I love thinking of that as like, as a ritual, like almost when you go into like a Shinto shrine, like you have to wash your hands first right before you go in. That's incredible. Oh, that's really beautiful. And I mean, to your point too about being able to listen, we have really gotten so bad at that as a culture, right? Of listening to why people feel the way that they feel, and like why they might be hesitating to take a vaccine or to seek a treatment. And I think that's such a privilege and an opportunity for physicians to be those listeners, and then to be the people who to share that, right? And here's what I am hearing, like, here's why people are making these choices and like what we can do about it. That's such an amazing part of the profession.
Yeah. And I think, hard conversations are those things that you kind of dread in anticipation of them. But then when you're in the midst of it, whether it's kind of negotiating goals of care for a dying patient or trying to convince a mother to take the COVID vaccine, you're really engaging with another person, with you being the bearer of information, and they are looking to you for that guidance. And ultimately, it's not your job to impose a judgment or a decision, but rather to empower them to make a call in alignment with whatever is important to them. And so that's I think very special, and something that I'll always kind of hold dear whenever that opportunity presents itself.
Yeah. I think when we were talking last time to get ready for this call, you talked about, going in, if somebody says I am vaccine hesitant, not immediately launching into a spiel, but saying, okay, tell me where you are on this. Like, where are you at? Like, I'm just not sure, or I'm like never going to do this, and being able to be respectful of their position first, before then you try, right?
Yeah. No, and I think like it's such a good, you make such a good point, because I think historically medicine has been very paternalistic. What the doctor says goes, and that dynamic is starting to shift. And particularly why I love this concept of hospital at home is because suddenly that locus of control shifts to the patient and the family. And you suddenly have to be responsive to whatever their customs or norms are. And so I think meeting the patient where they are feels like something everyone should be able to do. But it's something that we don't practice nearly enough in the clinical setting and during our medical training. But probably is the biggest determinant of, the trust and relationship that a patient has with the healthcare system, particularly those who are minoritized or marginalized in any way.
Earning that trust back is really, that's something that really energizes me. The idea, just even like, how do you earn trust? Not just like assume that it's there and like make it happen, but like really earn it. It's such important work for us to all do in healthcare. Well, we just have a couple more minutes left. I have 2 more questions for you. So one is just a shout out to a couple inspirations. Like what are you geeking out on right now related to, something artistic or creative in healthcare? Is there anything that's come across your radar where you're like, I wish everybody knew about this?
So there's something called 30 Days of Type. My Instagram is full of graphic designers and artists, and I consume their work all the time. Which is not something that a doctor would typically say. But 36 Days of Type is a challenge that artists can take on themselves. And every day is a different letter that they have to represent visually. I can't remember exactly what the dates are, but it fills my timeline with the most creative ways to draw a letter A. And it's one of my favorite times of year.
That's really fun.
A book I just read is called What the Eyes Don't See. And it's written by a pediatrician based in Flint, Michigan. And she was the whistleblower behind the water crisis there with lead. And her advocacy has been truly like an inspiration and moral calling for so many pediatric trainees like myself. Her name is Mona Hana Atisha. So that book helped kind of solidify what I am hoping to do from an advocacy standpoint. And she was just so bold with her work in a way that I think has transformed the city of Flint, but I think also has provided us as being a standard bearer for other physicians around the country.
Wow.
Just an incredible person.
Those are great. All right. Well, last question with our last minute here, but give me like a 30-second view of a version of a healthcare utopia that you're imagining.
Okay. Small question. I think for me, a healthcare utopia is one where you are able to access dignified, high quality, culturally and linguistically concordant care, no matter where you live, what you look like, or how much you earn. I hope that health will be recognized as something that is not just biological, but is expansive in terms of, and as a function of kind of our political and social and economic conditions. As we enter this and hurtle into this age of artificial intelligence, I see a utopia as one where we are not at the whim of technology and algorithms, but rather one where we are able to work alongside these platforms that can augment our work and reconnect us with the humanistic sides of medicine that we've kind of lost touch with. And hopefully improve the way that we are able to provide care both within the States and globally.
That was amazing. Really well done. That was so well done. No, exactly right. There's so much technology and also so much room for humanity as we go forward. Well, I am so grateful to you for joining the conversation, getting to talk to you at the precipice of this big career milestone is so exciting. And, I hope we can continue to be friends and to continue to help you do amazing things. Thank you so much.
I hope so. Thanks so much, Emily.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.